you doing, y'all? Matt, Massive Beers here. Back with a Super Bowl Sunday beer review. Yeah, been doing a lot of these beer reviews kind of like day of or day before. Because I'm just not really doing kind of the backlog thing now. Reviewing quite a bit less, and kind of wanted to do a beer review for Super Bowl Sunday. I have the perfect beer for it. I've reviewed this beer before. Not this iteration, but versions of this beer before, and it's football related, so I thought it would be very, very on brand. Yeah, a little bit of Funky Buddha. This be their Undefeated Saison. Yeah, Funky Buddha. Part of who owns Funky Buddha now? I forget. Ooh, bad on me. Anyway, Oscar Blues. No, that's Canarchy, right? Anyway. Funky Buddha does this beer every year. They are based out of Florida, and this is kind of a Miami Dolphins beer. The only professional sports team in the United States to ever go undefeated the whole season. And by whole season, I mean the whole regular season, playoffs, and win the Super Bowl. The only other sports team of major sports that I know that have done that is also my favorite team too, which is Arsenal. When they went undefeated the Invincible season. But this is a football, and it's their Undefeated Saison. It's kind of a morphed beer, almost a Solera method kind of version of the beer, in that it kind of morphs and changes. I believe there's always previous versions of this beer inside of it, and it's kind of slowly kind of crept up in the ABV. This is an 11.8%. It is a Brut base, so we all know Brut IPAs. It was kind of all the rage a year or two ago. That was in here much before that became very popularized in the God, words are hard, in the IPAs. And yeah, it's an ale with natural flavors. Okay. Aged in Chardonnay barrel. So it's a Chardonnay barrel aged ale, but it's 11.8%, so it's higher in ABV. At first glance, you think, Saison, a Brut-based Saison, Chardonnay barrels. You think, okay, a nice Saison, maybe 6, 7, 8. No, you're talking about 11.8% here. Nothing as far as any kind of words on here, but this beer actually gets released every year when the last NFL team loses. So, once the last NFL team gets a loss, the Miami Dolphins are assured their record will not be broken, and they released this beer. I believe the Cardinals were the last team to be beaten in week 8, maybe, I think it was. And this got released a little bit later. Pandemic rules, all that kind of stuff. It takes a little bit longer, as you can see in this little neck card here. I'll read it for you guys. It's Undefeated Saison Vintage 2021. It is each football season has its own unique storylines, and this year's vintage is no different. Undefeated Saison was aged for over 2 years in Napa Valley Chardonnay barrels and finished with a still presentation to best resemble a juicy white wine. It bursts with intense flavors of apple, stone fruit, soft oak, and Pinot Grigio and Chardonnay juices. Serving suggestions: serve slightly chilled in a tall wine glass with rich pasta, chicken, or seafood. I'm doing this with pork. I think that'll be fine. Not on camera, but we got the pork loin going out there. That'd be a large wine glass, stemless wine glass. So yeah, we'll use that one. And let's wrap into this sucker, see what's what. Yeah, it is 4:30, day of Super Bowl. So we got 2 hours till game time. And I'm going to do a little online hang before the game, and then I'm going to sit and watch the game with my wife. So that should be quite fun. But I figured I'd pop this sucker off. Let's take this jacket off completely. And, little football theme. There we go. I'm excited to dive into this. So where is my envelope? There it is. I'm curious as to what kind of hiss we're going to get in this. Not a big hiss. You expect a lot of times with these kind of Brut-based beers, these champagne-y kind of beers, you expect a big pop of carbonation. So we'll see how this sucker rolls. Now, this was the 2021 version. There's really not much as far as carbonation on this sucker. But it was released, or at least it was sent to me. I don't think it got released until December. I got this, I think, in January. So we'll see what's what. So what does that look like? Does not really look much like a Saison. You're talking about tipping the scales at 12%. That kind of makes sense. You're talking about, being aged for 2 years in a barrel. That it does look like. Not a huge amount of carbonation in there, but it's there. It exists. If you could see kind of right on the edges, if I can get that focus going on, you can see there is carbonation kind of springing up on the edges of that. It just is not forming this full-on kind of crazy big head. Oak tannins, 2 years in a barrel, a bunch of stuff going on in here. That could be killing the carbonation too, so I'm not going to sit here and get too down on it. But man, it really does look like kind of like apple juice. And by apple juice, I don't mean like the apple sparkling apple juice you talk about in the label here. I'm talking about the apple cider that you get around Christmas time at your local like mom and pop grocery stores. They has that rich kind of apple cidery look to it, almost a la barley wine as far as coloration goes. So give that a swirl. Let's get a nose. It really does smell like a wine barrel aged barley wine, to be perfectly honest with you, because there's this rich caramel kind of vibe to it. What did they talk about here? Bursting the intense apple, and that, I guess that, you know what, I can go apple on that, but you want to think about like a caramelized apple. So bursting apple, stone fruit, soft oak. There's definitely an oak presence here, and then there's definitely a kind of nice vinous, lighter grape to it. Sort of Pinot Gris, the Chardonnay kind of level of grapiness, along with that kind of candy apple thing going on with this big oak presence to it. It comes off very much wine-like, comes off very much barrel-aged. It comes off very much aged, but it really is that sweetened kind of, slightly oxidized kind of old kind of barley wine kind of thing going on that really is kind of going like this to me. It's going like this. Whatever this is, it's going like that. It's basically, I'm intrigued by it. Let's put it this way. So we're just going to dive in. Cheers. That's barley wine, man. That's what that is. It's a wine barrel aged French oak barley wine. It is. It is. Here I am. I'm like, oh, I gotta make sure I put my little cork stopper on there. Make sure I don't lose all that carbonation. There's not much to lose, but hey, we want to keep what we got. This is really, really, really good. Like, really good. But not what it is. You know what I mean? Like, you look at this beer, you know, I think about this as a Brut dry. When I see Brut, you know, it pops in your head. It's the Brut IPA. You're basically talking about dryness. Something that's finishes clean, squeaky, and dry. Not really happening here. Saison. Not really happening here. So, on its face, I look at this. I picked this up off the shelf and I said, oh, it's a Brut wine barrel aged Saison. If that's what I'm expecting, I'm just not getting it. That being said, it's delicious. Absolutely delicious, but more in that kind of long haul age. You talk about 2 years in a barrel, so it's not like something that's, you know, been in there for 6-8 months of a fresher beer. It's a big, bold, pushing 12% rich, decadent malt base that's been kind of aged 2 years slow and low. It's kind of like a brisket of Saison, I guess, if you're going to put it that way. You know, you can have, you know, fry up a brisket. Who would ever do that? I don't know. But you can cook it real quick in the oven and throw it on a pan, fry it up, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to be the same brisket you get when you smoke it for 24 or whatever hours. This is kind of like a brisket Saison. And then they kind of slow and low roasted it in, well, hey, Super Bowl Sunday, I'll say whatever I want, in that those wine barrels, and just ends up coming off as this rich, decadent, more dessert-like kind of beer rather than something a bit later. And that's where it's kind of weird, where I kind of, kind of jumps the shark a little bit for me, because it's Undefeated Saison was aged for over 2 years in Napa Valley Chardonnay barrels. Okay, and then finished with a still presentation to best resemble juicy white wine. Okay, so I read that and didn't process it. So it's still presentation. That's the lack of carbonation here. It does have carbonation. It's not completely still, but they call that out on there. But this whole kind of juicy white wine, I guess you'd say they're not going for color here. They're talking about a juicy white wine. So this is me kind of reading this wrong. So they're actually hitting what they want in here. So they're talking about the still. They're trying to explain stillness to it. So for those who don't know and haven't caught on, still basically means lack of carbonation. Pretty much all wine is still. There's a lot of still malted beverages, and that's what they're trying to impart here. Maybe the wording could have been a little bit better because I'm very familiar with that. I just didn't get that from the first read. Is that they're basically saying we have a Saison, more like a rich barley wine that was aged in wine barrels, and we're presenting it relatively stilly. So don't expect carbonation. So that they explained it on here, just didn't reiterate. So that's more of me than them. But they said it bursts with intense flavor of apple, stone fruit, soft oak, Pinot Grigio, and Chardonnay juices. It does. It does. I mean, the stone fruit apple thing, I could go in a different direction. For me, it's more of a caramel apple leaning into a figgy thing, leaning into that kind of rich caramel, datey, figgy thing you'd expect from a barley wine. That's where it lands for me, but we're all different. But what it doesn't, what's the word I'm going to look for here, or try to express. It's so good. What it doesn't miss is taste. It's super intense, super rich. For someone that loves barley wine, there's a little pepper, big, not little, but decent pepperiness to this. So that's where I think some of this kind of Saison yeast is really coming through. So it's a peppery barley wine, like a white pepper barley wine, aged in white wine barrels for 2 years. And a huge amount of oak, I'm kind of not even really talking about in this beer just because everything else is so big and bold and intense, is that it's a really unique and really tasty beer. Last year's was, I liked. I did enjoy it. I believe it was last year or the year before. I might have skipped 1 year on these, I forget. But the last one I had, I liked it, but there was something a little bit amiss. And for me, it kind of makes sense now diving into this based off of recall, is that other one was somewhere between a Saison and a barley wine. And each year this beer gets a little bit bigger, a little bit bolder, a little bit richer. I think that gap, well, it wasn't a negative beer. It was kind of just without personality, or defined personality. It was tasty, it was fun, I liked it, I enjoyed it. Because it was stuck between those worlds. It was in the limbo. This is a little bit more brash, a little bit more knows what it's doing. It wants to be this big, bold, rich kind of barley wine with a lot of these more delicate kind of vinous and oaky kind of flavors that just marry really, really well. It's very much kind of like an oxymoron of beers. It's a brutish, gentle giant kind of thing going on. It's bold and rich and aggressive, but very delicate and light and kind of nuanced on the other side of things. And I think that's a really cool trick to pull off. It really is. Kind of like the 72 Miami Dolphins, you know. They punch you in the mouth or juke you out of your shorts. So, yeah, I like this. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Not what I expected. Well, Funky Buddha did this beer. Not saying I wouldn't expect this from them, but based off label, I was expecting something a little bit lighter, a little bit more spritzy. But after processing the label correctly and just kind of drinking the beer as it is, it's really tasty. A lot going on. Super, what's the word we like to use with all the beer stuff? Super complex, that's the word. I remembered it. Here we go. And just a really fun beer to drink, to be perfectly honest with you. It's probably one of the better kind of like wine barrel aged big beers. I mean, that's probably the safest or the best way I can kind of compartmentalize this beer is the big wine barrel aged beer. You know, it's almost like it's not this, but it's almost like Sammy Claus in a sense, to where you can't really classify Sammy Claus. It's not a Doppelbock. They call it a Doppelbock. They call it a Saison. I would never call it a Saison. I would never call Sammy Claus a Doppelbock. But what I do call them are tasty AF. And all the bits and pieces of this, from the oak being big and brash, it has to be with this ABV, and that has vinous characteristics from those grapes coming through, to that kind of aged, slight oxidative thing that kind of really brings this and kind of sings of a barley wine. And just that little peppery note just to kind of circle back and just make you remember that it's a Saison at its core. It's fantastic. A great opener. Hopefully for a great game. I'm super excited for the Super Bowl. I was talking about this kind of more like with friends, but not that you guys aren't friends, but this is the first Super Bowl. I have zero rooting interest in the teams. Not that I'm not excited for the game. I actually am quite excited. I want to see what happens, and I'll give my prediction at the end of this. I'm cool with both teams winning, you know, like, the Rams win, awesome. Aaron Donald is the best football player of this generation. It's not even close. Like, not even close. Like, he should win. It's kind of like when Michael Jordan was in the NBA and they gave other people MVPs and stuff, they're just like, well, we got to give it to somebody else because Mike wins it every year. Aaron Donald should win not just Defensive Player of the Year, but MVP every single year. And it's not even close. And you'll see people argue, like J.J. Watt argued for his brother because his brother T.J. Watt ended up winning defensive MVP. And he said, look at his stats. And they're in every category, they're slightly a bit better than Aaron Donald's stats. So that's why he deserves it. And be like, no, you're actually proving the opposite because T.J. Watt plays wide 9 on the outside, going for all those stats. Aaron Donald plays sometimes nose up with the center. He's an interior lineman getting almost wide 9 stats. The fact that he even gets close to those things blows everybody away. But anyway, so he deserves it. Stafford, come on, dude. For how long he languished in Detroit, you can't help it but want that guy to win. I'm a big McVay guy. I think this is the best chance he'll have at a Super Bowl for several years because of how they built this team after this next year or two. Then I don't think they're going to have the weapons that they have. So if he doesn't win this one, he might just kind of flutter off and go into kind of oblivion. And I think he, as a football mind, he deserves a ring. And on the other side of things, Cincinnati, man, you're talking about a tortured fan base. Really, really, really. I mean, they're not as bad as the Buffaloes of the world and whatnot, but they're pretty much up there because they've had success in other leagues. But man, Cincinnati, come on, Joe Burrow. Listen, I understand if you don't like Joe Burrow because you're a AFC North fan or whatnot, but outside of team loyalties like that, I wish I had a dude, you know what I mean, on my team. He just seems like a super good dude, super great quarterback. Who doesn't want to see him win? That fan base, the whole nine. Hopefully it's a great game. Scores. Let's do a prediction here. I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to say the Bengals are going to win. I am. Bengals 35 and the Rams 28. That's my guess. The Rams are favored. They're hands down the favorite, but there's just something about this Bengals team. Something about this Bengals team that has me kind of just enamored in love. You know what I mean? It's an AFC team. I'm not just rooting AFC because I like AFC. My Dolphins. I got my Danny jersey. You see it right there. There it is. Anyway, but yeah, let's do that. 35-28. Cincinnati Bengals. Who dey? They're the first people to say that, by the way, Saints people. Anyway, so there you go. A little bit of a Undefeated Saison review in the books. Undefeated Barley Wine, that's a word. Barley Wine Saison in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Mount Rushmore said as far as wine barrel-aged beers that I've had as late, absolutely, without a doubt. I don't know the value on this. I think Funky Buddha might actually set me off a note on this. I think it was limited distro, and like I said, it did release late, so if you really are looking for this and you see this, shoot me a message and I'll try to track down the availability of the beer. Let's put it that way. And there you go. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully you enjoyed today's Super Bowl. Hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully see you next time. Cheers, y'all.